Hey guys, it's Friday here on Subsweek on Pagan Perspective. I'm Brendan, aka Twisted Witch, your Aussie correspondent. Our question this week comes from Shanerevu, who is asking us about our personal practice with, if we practice with any particular deity, any particular pantheons of gods, or any spirits at all. And then also asking about our feelings on, where are we? Working with other beings like angels, spirits, gods, goddesses, demons, and the Fae, and do we believe in any of them? And do we believe any of them, and why? And do we feel that any are truly good or truly evil? Okay, so this is a long conversation we're going to have, possibly. My personal deities, as I've stated before in videos, are Hecate and Eros. Hecate being the Greek goddess associated with the underworld. She's also seen as the goddess of the crossroads. She's known to carry a key, a dagger, and a cord. Animals associated with her is the hound, the snake, and I personally associate owls with her as well. Time of the month, the moon association usually for me with her is dark moon and new moon. So it's that time kind of right between the phases. And yeah, I've been working with her for a couple of years now. I initially dedicated myself to her in my first official dedication to my practice over 10 years ago. She was my patron goddess I dedicated to, but in the last couple of years I've done a lot of personal dedication work with her as well. I usually work a lot with her on dark moons and new moons, making offerings, but also any other times during the month I do make offerings for her. My patron god being Eros, the Greek god of love, lust, and desire, but I also see him in his darker aspect as hate, mistrust, and anger. In the myths about him, he was one of the first gods, one of the first beings to be born from chaos itself. So you had love being Eros, there was also Gaia and Tartarus or Uranus, however you want to look at it from that aspect. So the earth and the sky were born as well. And it is said that Eros was the one that brought them together, thus creating the world that we live in now. With my personal association with him, I see him as carrying two sets of arrows. He has his gold arrows with dove feathers, which encourage love within the heart. Then he also carries leaden arrows that have owl feathers on there, which create mistrust and anger and hate. So I very much see him as a dualistic god there. And other associations I have with him, obviously being the dove and the owl for that. I also do a lot of my practice with him as well at dark moon and new moon, because I find it's that time when it's kind of potential and new beginnings. Also about him, I know that he is probably one of the gods that is feared amongst the Greek pantheons because of his arrows and what they can actually do. Whether they pierce a mortal's heart or a immortal, like a god's heart, they can bring reactions in either both of them. That's pretty much it for my deities I work with. I do work with other gods in the Greek pantheon as well. So I do work a little bit with Hermes, Heracles or Hercules, however you want to look at him. Done work with Gaia, Atlas as well, so a few of the Titans, and probably a bit of work with Demeter as well. As opposed to other pantheons, I do kind of have a draw for Loki. It seems to be a bit of a trickster thing with me, so I kind of like working with him as well, and when I tend to work with him, it tends to be a bit fun and crazy. I forgot to mention that in the Greek pantheon, I also tend to work with Pan a little bit, so I quite enjoy that work as well, because he's a bit fun too. What else? I'm just trying to think. I do work with my personal ancestors and spirits, so my blood relations, but also any spiritual and magically connected ancestors as well that I may have met, like friends, any guides or guardians. Like I personally work with my own totems and animal guides as well, so I include that into my aspects there. I'm trying to remember the rest here. Okay. In relation to our thoughts on beings like angels, I personally don't work with angels, but I do have friends that I do know that work with them. It's just not something that's ever kind of cropped up in my practice as being something to work with, but I can't say that It's not something that may appear later down the track. It's just not something I've ever dealt with personally. Spirits, I'm presuming you mean spirits as in ghost spirits, or I don't know, but with that, I haven't really worked with with ghosts much either. It's not in my kind of realm that I work with. I know and I acknowledge that there is the existence of them, but it's not something that I've personally had experience with at all. The next one, well, gods and goddesses, I explained, working with my personal patrons that I have, and then just, other gods and goddesses that I've worked with before. Through personal experience, it's best to get to know your god by knowing a lot about them first. It's essentially like a dating process. You need to get to know them. You need to not just rush into work, you don't want to rush into hardcore work with someone like Hecate and not knowing a lot of her aspects, because it could be slightly dangerous experience. Okay, yeah, it could be a bad experience. Or even if you were to, work with a goddess like Sekhmet, yeah, that's pretty interesting. That'd be, a fun experience. Well, not a fun experience. An interesting experience. But it's very much about getting to know them first. Even introducing yourself. Just little honorings. If you just light a candle for them. Just state who you are. What would you'd like to get out of your relationship with them. Any offerings that you may decide to make, what kind of workings you want to do with them, even just what's drawn you to them, and just kind of generally have chit-chats with them and get to know them and build that relationship and bond with them, because it's not something that's just going to happen instantly. It's something that develops over time, and you'll find that through that working and relationship, it kind of strengthens your power and work with them as well. Your question also about demons. Same thing for me with angels. I haven't really worked a lot with demons. After seeing The Golden Compass and wanting to read the book, I do like the idea of personal daemons, which they had down, which is spelt Daemons. And they had them as kind of like the manifestation of their spiritual creatures. They were kind of helpers to them. Like to general people, they were spiritual guardians and helpers that took on a physical form. And I kind of like the aspect of that. I know that I think some traditions like voodoo, which I think you're actually interested in, do have things like a fetch, which I think it's called. So that's the kind of aspect there that I can think of. The Fae is always a fun thing with me. I've probably worked with them on and off for 5 or 6 years now. So I have a lot of experiences with them. Exploring the courts, the underworld, the upper realms, working with all their sort of aspects and different bits and pieces with those guys, yeah. But in relation to your question also about them being truly evil or truly good, I think it really depends on how you interact with them. There are malevolent spirits out there, and there are the benevolent ones as well. So it's being careful about any interactions you may have with them, and learning to stay protected and guarded, but also knowing and being able to open and trust yourself with them and working with them as well. So not going into any working blindly, and just make sure you know your information and your stuff before you work with them. I think that's most of it. Oh, I did forget, which is pretty bad with me. I'm in a coven here, and we do have 4 gods that we work with. So we have the Weaver, the Stag Horn God, the Crescent Crown Goddess, and the Green Man. And they're our 4 patron gods we work with. So I do work with them in my personal practice as well now, and acknowledge them in all those aspects as well. So I think that's all the information I have for you. So if you want to know anything more, come check out my channel or send me a message or anything like that. But so this has been Friday with Brendan, and that's pretty much it. Much love and blessings, and blessed be.